Hello, everybody. Welcome to the LIUniverse. I'm Dr. Charles Liu, but of course you should call me Chuck. Thanks so much for being here today. What a joy it is for me to be able to talk with three incredibly amazing people and all the adventures that they have surrounding places like Antarctica and objects like things that, oh, I don't know, happen to fall in from space and land on the Earth. Let's just go right around the horn from New Mexico. Joining us from New Mexico today is meteorite specialist Geoff Notkin. Hello, Geoff.
Hello, Chuck.
Thanks so much for being here. We can't wait to see some of your meteorites and talk a little bit about the things that you've done over the years as the true Meteorite Man. That's pretty awesome stuff.
Well, thank you. I brought some. I brought some extraterrestrial wonders for you.
Oh, can't wait.
Bringing it all down to Earth.
Oh, we're going to do show and tell for sure coming up. And joining us from Arizona is Dr. Andrew Maynard. Hello, Doctor. How are you doing?
Hi, Chuck. I'm doing really well here. I
Good.
have no extraterrestrial wonders, unfortunately, but I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, your terrestrial wonder is just fine for me. Your expertise started out in aerosol physics all these years ago over in the UK and has expanded to just remarkable concepts about how humanity
I have no idea what I do these days. Yes, I left the tracks somewhere.
We'll try to find it in the resume comb
Right.
and go from there. And joining us from Massachusetts is former astronaut Cady Coleman. Hello, Cady.
Hey there.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I know that. Never mind. Thank goodness you never came down from Earth, from space to Earth at any more than a controlled speed, and we're really glad that's the case. But I know that you spent some time looking for things that came down at a very high speed some years ago. I bet.
I did. 2.5 months in Antarctica.
Wow.
It was the most amazing time.
Wow. Well, we look forward to talking to that, and I absolutely must say that Cady and Andrew co-host the Mission Interplanetary podcast, available where all your podcasts are obtained. It is amazing, just remarkable stuff. Everyone, if you get a chance, please go hear the Mission Interplanetary podcast, co-hosted by Dr. Andrew Maynard and Cady Coleman. Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for all of you being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I want to start right away with those meteorites.
Excellent.
Okay, the deal is this. Geoff, you've told all your audience and all the people you've spoken with all the years before that in the end, yes, getting those meteorites is great, but it's the adventure that matters. It's the experience. It's the friends you made along the way that matters. And so I want to start with the concept of global adventure. Like you are a global adventurer first and foremost, and you just happen to find meteorites, which is pretty awesome. And we all sort of adventure in our own way, but tell us a little bit about some of that kind of adventure that you've had over all these wonderful years.
Well, with pleasure, Chuck, and thanks. That was a very nice intro. So I grew up on these classic adventure movies like King Solomon's Mines and Lawrence of Arabia. This was popular fare in the England of my youth, and I loved science fiction, comic books, space flight.
Yes.
I was always been a devotee of both robotic and crewed spaceflight missions. I was allowed to stay home from my very strict British school to watch the moon landings, which has always been one of the highlights of my childhood. Not just because I was able to watch this unfold in real time, but because my dad wrote a note to the very stuffy headmaster of my school, informing him, not asking him, but informing him that young Jeffrey was staying home to watch the moon missions. So how can you not fall in love with spaceflight at an early age when you get to miss school in order to observe it? So there's this love of travel and adventure in foreign countries. My parents were both foreign service, and they spoke multiple languages, and they were into this idea of adventure holidays before it was a thing. And a lot of my earliest memories are of traveling in very remote parts of North America, Africa, all across Europe. And my parents' way was always, well, let's take the most obscure roundabout scenic way and stay at this funny little local place and eat the local food. And it was never luxury hotels for us. It was always the very authentic experience. So I blame my parents for my love of travel
wonderful.
and adventure. And and also meteorites, really, because my dad was an amateur astronomer, and both my parents were great believers in museums and the arts and hands-on educational experiences out of the classroom. So a lot of my earliest memories are looking through my dad's telescope at night. Andrew will relate, on evenings when it was clear in the UK.
Those 2 days of the year, yes.
Yeah, it was kind of almost as big an event as having an eclipse, was just having a clear sky. And my dad would rush up and he'd wake me up during the night. He'd shake me awake, this little boy, put me in a blanket and carry me outside and go, look, you can see the moons of Jupiter. So my parents were very eccentric. And
wonderful parents.
So
props.
Yeah, no, I was very lucky. And so couple that with the museum visits. I feel like I spent, Andrew and I have spoken about this before, but I think I spent half my childhood in Dorset looking for fossils on what's now called the Jurassic Coast, Mary Anning's homeland, and the other half in the Geological Museum, which is now part of the NHM London, where they had a meteorite collection. They had a haul of meteorites. And this was a source of infinite wonder for me. A kid who looks up through his dad's telescope, obsessed with Star Trek and Doctor Who, comic book, sci-fi, spaceflight, geology, all comes together in meteorites in this dark little hole at the back of the Geological Museum. And so this was my dream as a kid. You must one day own a real meteorite.
Wow.
Now, little did I think that this dream would grow and turn into such a monster that I would end up founding a meteorite company and doing the Meteorite Man television show for Discovery and having all these adventures. But it was, Chuck, it was always a mix. So it's the wonder of meteorites. I want to find them. I want to hold them in my hands, particularly if that involves going to highly inaccessible places like Siberia or the Australian outback. So there's the thrill of the hunt, and there's the wonder of the vastness of the landscape. And when those two come together, for me, those have been the biggest adventures in my life.
Fantastic. Now, have you ever been to Antarctica to look for meteorites?
Alas, no. And this is where I'm so envious of Cady, that she's been on the ANSMET search for meteorites. And I have many friends and colleagues who have been. My author friend Chris Kokinos, who wrote a wonderful book about meteorites, joined the expedition. And so I've heard the stories, I've seen the photographs. We actually we did pitch very hard doing a Meteorite Man episode in Antarctica, and our production company, which we loved, very courageous and very good to us, said, well, it's so expensive to go. And so Steve Arnold, my co-host, and I go, that's no problem. Let's do a double episode, and then it'll only cost half as much. So we did look into it.
Good idea.
And thanks. I thought so. A twofer, as we'd say in Canada or England. So I was very, very, very keen on this. It's the only continent I haven't been to, the only continent I haven't found a meteorite on. Plus, I'm fascinated by the history of Antarctica, and enthralled. I just would love to visit McMurdo Station. I must mention, since I said McMurdo, my television show Meteorite Men aired on all 7 continents, and you'd go, oh well, wouldn't any successful show? No. Not most shows don't air on all 7 continents. I know for a fact that it aired in McMurdo because a fan had recorded it when it was airing on Science and took copies down and showed it at movie night at McMurdo Station. So that was one of the highlights of my career, that I can actually say our show aired on all 7 continents, although it was on the unofficial side.
Well done, well done.
So we did look into this, but we were told in the nicest possible way by the authorities.
Not so much.
Well, no. They said nobody owns Antarctica as per the treaty. You can come to it. We can't stop you from coming to Antarctica. Have a great time.
They just make it really difficult. Yeah.
Don't call us when you get in trouble.
Right.
Don't 911 or SOS or dial 999 because we've already told you we're not going to come rescue you.
Wow.
So that was enough for production to go, no, not going to happen. We're not rescuing you guys.
Well, too bad.
Katie, if you've got any connections
That's
Cady,
right.
if you got an in there,
That's
we'll
right,
talk
Cady.
later.
You were there 2.5 months. Tell us about this. Now, I should mention that for the audience who doesn't know this, the majority of meteorites that have been found in our human lifetimes were found on Antarctica. And so this is an incredibly important place to do this kind of research and do this kind of recovery. And Cady, you had a chance to do this. Tell us about that. That's pretty amazing.
Well, I was, a guest. Basically, the ANSMET or Antarctic Search for Meteorites is something that happens almost every year. And Geoff, you can correct me, but my understanding was, and as a scientist, I just thought this was fascinating, was that until sometime in the 70s, there were like, I don't know, less than some small number, 500 meteorites known. Right, some small number of meteorites for study.
Yeah.
And it was so enough that, like, when you want to chop something up, you better think really hard whether you're going to answer the right, are you going to destroy this specimen for future research or whatever. And when they started going to Antarctica for ANSMET, then they're bringing back so many more samples. And so by the time I went in about 2002, there were like 26,000 samples,
Wow.
up from a few hundred.
Wow.
I might be off my numbers, but just the fact that by going and finding them, it really changed what scientists were able to do in terms of investigating. And they cleverly bring scientists to Antarctica to do the hunting so that they understand actually how much goes into it, how hard it really actually is, how much it costs in terms of fuel and supplies and, risk and, all those things that when you're really there, it's clear that you've got to be really careful and you got to take care of each other and that you're in a place where this is serious. And that's actually why the astronaut office is interested in sending astronauts, is because we can simulate, hey, it's going to be risky up in space and you better do things right. But when you get to be in an environment that really is that way, you learn a lot about yourself and you learn some of those lessons about what am I like when I'm under those kind of stressful conditions.
Wow. So being on Antarctica, aside from the fact that you can breathe unaided, is pretty much like being out in space in really critical ways.
It's really isolated. There's a lot of things you don't control, including who's on your team.
Oh.
And there's very little picking that goes on. We were the reconnaissance team, so there were 4 of us, and I was actually the last minute replacement for Sunny Williams, who is a beloved wonder astronaut. If you look up ISS tour, like International Space Station tour, in Sunny, SUNI, you will see the most wonderful tour of the space station ever. And because she got selected for that mission, I was her last minute replacement for that, and which was a pretty cool phone call for me, actually.
Well, how were the conditions there? What was the camping like?
It was minus 15 to 30. It depended. It was interesting to me. We spent probably 1 day out of 4 in our tents.
Jeez.
Because it was too nasty to go out. And what they had found over the years is that, and so what going out means, the team suits up, you've got snowmobiles, and you're literally doing a grid, back and forth, snowmobiles at like 5 miles an hour, looking for meteorites. You're spread out. And then whenever anybody finds something on the ice, and Geoff might have a better way to explain this, but the way I think of it is that, basically the continent, the ice is always kind of expanding and melting, and meteorites that have, are 400,000 years old,
Yeah.
are, have been getting buried in the ice there. And as the continent is expanding, that ice is basically taking sort of the up escalator up, and the wind ablates away all the snow, and you're left with these deposits. There's actually a geological mechanism that makes it so there are certain places where you're more likely to find them.
Wow.
And so we
Cady,
went to some of those places.
And Cady, I'm guessing because Antarctica is unique in terms of the thickness of those ice sheets, that anything that isn't ice there almost definitely has got to come from somewhere other than Earth. Is that correct?
Well, it depends where in Antarctica. And where we
Right.
were near the South Pole, it's so thick that is indeed true. And so you would see even something the size of a fingernail on the ice, and you'd know that it was something that came from space,
Wow.
unless one of the things, so our task was to go to 6 different sites and check them out. Is this a place we should send a larger team in future years? And one of these times going between those camps, we're actually literally on our snowmobiles, one after the other, going
Oh, man.
about 12 miles or so. And found, saw this object and, stopped and, waving and waving. Hey, I found something. And it was an apple core.
Oh my gosh.
And we were
Those
the only,
scientist litter bugs.
we were actually the only team to go after a team had been there 11 years before.
Oh man.
It was documented. There was no one else had been in that place. And it was actually the team led by Johnny Scott, who was our leader, our guide to the ice there.
Amazing.
So it was interesting. I mean, but if you do find a meteorite, I mean, it's going to be anything dark on the ice is that, and you're going to wave your hands. Everybody comes over. There's a special collection procedure where we mark with the GPS, where that thing is, collect it with special tongs, put it in these Teflon bags, which are really, 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 really hard to open.
Wow.
I had the gloves, the only gloves that seem to when you're in the grocery store and you're trying to open those bags.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Like that? Ooh, that's hard.
And then if anything happened when you were collecting it that you should fess up about, my nose might have been dripping a little bit on that
Oh
one.
no.
I mean, you have to fess up, because otherwise, I mean, people are going to draw all sorts of conclusions.
There's
Right,
life on that
life.
meteorite.
Yes.
That's right. That's it. Oh my
But it's
goodness.
really hard, and they have found that when people are cold and tired, doing that kind of that sort of is slow and monotonous, and you get cold because you're not really moving very much, that they don't find as many.
Oh really?
And so that's why when it's a crummy day,
Just stay
you
in.
stay in the tent.
Just wait until
And that's
you're
when
better.
you learn geology and geography and all sorts of cool things from the other people on your crew.
Super duper cool. That's just
Cady, are you absolutely sure that apple core didn't fall out of space
Yeah,
and it's
see.
not conclusive proof of life elsewhere in the universe?
Well, actually, Jeff,
from-
what you don't know is when they have to dispose of those cores on the International Space Station,
That's right.
you think that they bag them all up and bring them down again.
And maybe we should have done a DNA test on that.
There you go.
On that apple
Could have
core.
come in at hypersonic speeds, created a shock wave protecting it, and this it lands and didn't burn up. I don't know.
We're making stuff up. We have
Completely.
to tell the listeners
That's
we're
true.
making
This
stuff
is all
up.
fake. Sorry, we're just.
But I do think it's important to understand the sort of the numbers. I mean, we found a few hundred.
Wow.
Us in that area about 200 miles from the South Pole, a few hundred. But then the other team that was in the lee of the mountains, where Andrew, you're saying is everything you see. There are mountains there.
I guess
there
yes.
are rocks, and to me that would have been a much more daunting search, actually, because you're literally looking at a beach full of rocks.
Oh man.
And thinking which one of these is not like the other, which is mentally really quite taxing.
Yeah.
And a moraine is that range of rocks. That's what it's called. It's called a moraine. And so there's a place they called Quiche Moraine, which was very hard to search. Anyways, it was pretty cold where we were. When we all got together afterwards, the team that had been in the lee of the mountains and us that had been sort of further out on the ice there, and we're comparing pictures. All of our pictures, you wore 3 of everything.
Oh.
You wore 3 things on your face, goggles, 3 things on your face, 3 pairs of gloves, layers, long underwear, all that kind of stuff. And we saw them with faces showing and footballs. we actually grabbed the wrong boarding pass.
Amazing. So, Andrew, you and I have not had these amazing adventures that Jeff and Cady
not yet.
have. Not yet. But, our journeys have also had their twists and turns. I think it's fair to say, you were describing in your life, you originally trained as a physicist. I know you were an opera singer as a teenager, and somehow you are now.
Tell the world about that. I seem to remember having this sort of this non-disclosure agreement about the opera singing.
Sorry,
Andrew, we have been co-hosts for how long? And I am just now hearing about the opera singing.
I was a teenager. It was a bad time.
What? Opera's wonderful. Why is it a bad time? It was a great time.
Well,
right?
no. It's not the opera. It was me.
but the idea of moving from one thing to another in life is actually a significant thing for us. I mean, we think about Cady, for example, being an astronaut, but actually, in fact, going to Antarctica. You don't always think that these connections. Your path must have been very unusual to get you where you are today, especially you being a risk innovation specialist, a future seer, not just making predictions like Nostradamus or something, but actually looking at the reality of the present and projecting it into the future with some scientific understanding and insight. Talk to us about that path.
Yeah, so I guess like so many people, when I was a teenager, I would have had no idea what I would have been doing these days. But that's what's been so exciting about it. So I started life being absolutely enamored with science and physics in particular. And in fact, I actually studied physics because I couldn't actually do anything else. I was really bad at everything else I put my hand to,
Except
but
opera
love
singing.
physics.
Except opera singing.
Well, actually, well, no. See, that was the problem. I was also bad at that, so just why we left it in the past. But yes, I went through my career curious about a lot of things, and every now and again, a new opportunity came up. The opportunity to get involved with the early days of nanotechnology, for instance, with the US government, or the opportunity to get involved with things like synthetic biology or artificial intelligence, or the opportunity to really dig in deep around science communication. And I think it was sort of that early curiosity that drove me to be a scientist, also got me excited about all these different things. I mean, I never planned any of this. It's just that these opportunities came along, and I thought this is really interesting. And it got me to where I am now. But the thing that really gets me is if I look back, and I'd be interested to see whether Geoff and Cady feel this, or even you, Chuck. I was so different 10 years ago. Yes, I mean, I sort of, to me, the excitement of things is the fact that I'm doing different things now than I was 10 years ago. I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago.
That's a great way to put it. And a lot of the folks who tune into the Looniverse podcast and just in general are younger and thinking about like the paths that we've taken to go forward. Your point that you're different now, or you're doing different things now than you were 10 years ago is very, very important, I think. A lot of young people, even when I was younger, yes, even Chuck, uh, we, we don't think that when we are 10 years in the future that we would be doing different things, right? We have to almost consciously tell ourselves, don't do the same thing. We are different,
Right.
and we're gaining new experiences all the time, new adventures, new ideas, right? So um, let me just ask you then, what new thing are you thinking about when it comes to things like space or space particles or things that hit the Earth, or things that come up from the Earth? Give us a thing that's been on your mind in this general
Oh
area.
goodness me, yeah. So actually, I wasn't prepared for this, but of course the space stuff is interesting. And I cover so many different areas, but you mentioned risk. So I've spent
Yes.
many years thinking about risk and trying to wrap my head around how we think differently about risk, because as humans, we're really bad when it comes to risk. And of course, when you talk about risk, one of the big things is large meteors hitting the Earth, not these sort of tiny
Right.
little things that Jeff and Katie have been collecting, but the sort of existential risk meteors. And of course, that's not going to happen for a long time.
Well, hold
But
on.
it's a serious. Well,
Let me not
sorry.
let me interrupt you just
We don't
briefly
know
about
that.
this because we don't know that. Chelyabinsk happened only about 10 years ago, and this was an
See, right,
airburst. For those of you who don't know, this was an airburst of what was probably an icy meteorite. But it didn't hit the Earth, thank goodness. It blew up many miles up in the sky, because if it actually reached the ground, I did this calculation when
right.
it actually came in, it would have leveled every tree, every building, every structure in an area the size of Chicago. I mean, that was
Right.
potentially extremely dangerous. It blew up over Chelyabinsk in Siberia. About 1 million people live in that city. So
Right.
we are talking about actual real risk, aren't we?
So I'm glad you said that. We absolutely are, and one of the challenges with risk is separating out the possibility of something happening from the probability. So of course we know these events happen, and they've been happening through the lifetime of the Earth. But of course, the probability of something happening that is going to devastate a lot of lives is actually much lower than that. So navigating this reality where we know there's this tail where there are going to be large meteors hitting the Earth, and working out what the likely outcomes of that are going to be is not that straightforward. Um, but of course, we've got to think about it, and that's why a lot of people are thinking about how we actually deal with that.
Well, and actually, we're working to make better measurements, better able to understand, what is, what does the asteroid cloud look like?
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
exactly
yeah,
it. Yes. Yeah.
because those
Yeah.
those asteroids are not going to pick, what country they're not going to respect country lines. I mean, this is a people of Earth issue.
Yeah.
It really is, and so that's one of the things where I think so many of us hope that we have this wake up call and we start acting as a whole civilization rather than just these little communities, because big meteors don't respect boundaries, as you say.
Shall I mention? Dare I mention the movie Don't Look Up? and the
So I was hoping you wouldn't,
parody
but
that it had about what we think about these global disasters. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's just an excellent point. I wish we had substantially more time to talk at this moment, but we do not. So we have to go right to show and tell. I asked each of you to bring something super cool to show us. We only have a few seconds to describe it, but imagine you are now coming back to that second grade classroom back when you were a child, and you bring in that one special thing to show everybody, this is my blank. Okay, let's do this. We have to go to Geoff first. Surely you have something amazing to show and tell us.
Chuck, I brought so many meteorites to show you. You mean I have to choose just one?
Just for now.
No.
Just for
No.
now. In the future, more. Don't worry.
For sure. So I'm often asked, Geoff, in all your adventuring around the world, what's the favorite thing? What's the strangest thing you found? The strangest thing I found was a 2,000-pound unexploded bomb outside of a military test range in Utah.
I was going to ask you about
were
that.
you? Yes. Well,
It's like, what is he doing with that?
You'll be very pleased to know. Yes, I know you've seen the photo, Cady. It's been published in one of my books, but we were searching for a meteorite that was seen to fall in Utah. And we were outside the Dugway Proving Ground, the top secret military testing ground, outside. And we found this 2,000-pound unexploded warhead, which was reported to the Air Force and apparently blown up on the spot because they said it was so dangerous they didn't want to try moving it. I was hunting in Australia. We were filming a Meteorite Man episode at the Henbury Craters, which is a site I'd wanted to visit since childhood, where there are 15 meteorite craters in very close proximity, and it's all from the same impact. Seems to feature in oral history of the Aboriginal peoples. So they seem to be aware that something happened there about 4,600 years ago. So I was swinging my detector, and I got this very loud target. I go, well, that sounds good. That almost sounds too good. It sounds like maybe it's a can or not another unexploded bomb near the surface. And I saw this tiny little bit of the smallest thumb of iron sticking out of the ground. And I thought, oh, that doesn't seem right. Touched my magnet to it, and out of the ground leapt this beautiful piece, a Henbury iron, which always reminds me of an elephant's head.
Yes,
to me, it looks
exactly
like
what it looks
the
like.
ears and trunk of an elephant. So that's in no way the largest meteorite that I found, but that's my favorite from an impact that's about 4,600 years ago. And like we talked about with the White Court piece, you can see how this has just been ripped by the fury of impact. So that gives you an idea of why we should have serious preparedness for the potential of asteroid impacts on Earth.
Amazing.
That's what the Earth does to iron when it
plus the fact 4,000 years isn't that long.
Yeah.
No,
long
this is recent history.
Yes. And and Andrew, as you know, there are multiple impacts that have produced craters within the last 50,000 years. On
Right.
Andrew, show and tell time. What you got for us?
Oh, I used to hate this at school because I never had anything. I mean, I was a physicist. We did theory. We did stuff in our head. So actually, I don't have anything to show apart from what you can see behind me, which there's nothing interesting there.
Oh,
There's
no,
really
lots
fun
of great
things there.
stuff back there. Yes.
What do you want me to show from what's behind me? It seems to have... Actually,
the Hitchhiker's box set.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So actually, this is relevant. So let me just pull it off. So actually, so this for everybody watching, this is the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio series by Douglas Adams, the one and only and best. If you want to know anything about how to navigate towards a better future, this actually is your guide. It's a comedy series, but it is so insightful. And of course, it actually connects with space because so much of the Hitchhiker's Guide happens in space. I've actually got to tell you one thing about this now that you brought it up, Geoff. Nothing to do with meteors. But one of the storylines in Hitchhiker's Guide is about this guy, Zani Whoop, who is in his office, and the characters go and try and visit him, and they're told they can't because he's on an intergalactic tour, which is a huge joke in Hitchhiker's Guide, apart from the fact that these days with the metaverse and the multiverse, this is what people are doing in virtual reality. So finally, reality is catching up with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So yeah, that's a nice link there.
It only
And
took half
Andrew,
a century. Yeah.
I'm so glad you so glad you mentioned that bit, because that has what I think is the funniest line in all of Hitchhikers. When Zaphod goes to Megadodo Publishing and he's looking for Zarniwoop and he encounters the guy at the office and they have that exchange, and the guy says, "Oh, Mr. Beeblebrox, you're so weird. You should be in pictures." And he says, "Yeah, baby,
Right,
and you should be in real life."
Oh,
I
classics.
remember it well.
The classics.
Y'all should check out the poster from Expedition 42 on the space station, because we do know what the answer is.
That's right. That's right.
And they have, if you look up the poster from their mission, they
actually
understood the
42 on
gravity and the responsibility that they had to the universe.
With 42.
Yes.
Marvelous.
They did.
I have got to say that I have bored my students for so many years by trying to get them to listen to the radio series, and none of them have actually followed up on this. I don't know whether it's my age or whether it's a cultural thing, but students these days just don't know they're bored when it comes to Hitchhiker's Guide. I'm going to get that out there.
Get that going, yes, because
I totally agree with you, Andrew. I love all the iterations of Hitchhikers, the books, the film, the TV show, everything, even the towel. I saw the original stage show at the London Rainbow in 1978. They all, I like you, I'm a major fan. They all have excellent things, but man, nothing beats the radio show. Nothing beats the radio show. It is the original and the finest.
Well, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I am a new devotee.
Oh, really?
How about that?
Oh, I've listened to it twice. I mean, it's wonderful. Okay, I have the lamest thing to show, so I'm going to go last. Cady, show us your cool thing.
Well, I often think about storytelling, and of course, I'm a mom, so what to bring home, right? That will matter to my kid. And actually, I had not only one, but two penguins on the trip. I mean, I actually really do when I go, I trained underwater, I would bring underwater doggy. And so I brought another doggy to Antarctica. Actually, a little penguin. I think Petey went to Antarctica. But then I got there, and you wouldn't think that there's a gift store in Antarctica, but there really, really is.
What?
And so I have t-shirts, I have sweatshirts, all waiting for the 2.5-year-old to grow up and grow into these things that I've been actually wearing too. But it's nice just to make that experience real, to have some sweatshirt that reminds you that you really were in this place that not many people get to go to, and you
I've
found
got to ask,
pieces of the universe.
Where was the gift shop? I mean, you were in a tent in the middle of nowhere. Where was the gift shop?
It turns out there's two. Okay.
Whoa.
There's one in McMurdo. Okay, and some of it, and they bring. It's just that people want to have a T-shirt. My parents went to this place, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. So I got T-shirts, right? I brought cash. I was ready. But then the New Zealand base had their own gift store. And this...
Whoa!
He's been to the South Pole.
Wow.
And, but I like these ways of making things real to people. And I think it's nice to have them hang around and look cute as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
There we go.
Yay!
A real Antarctic penguin on the show at last.
And been to the South Pole and everything.
He has.
Do you need an export permit for that, Cady?
No one asked, but I did just I like that our suits are very big, and he might have been just kind of stuffed in.
Right. Okay. Well, my show and tell item is the lamest, clearly now after seeing all of yours, but I still think it's cool and it's worth sharing because it's from one of the crew members of the LIUniverse show, who actually did go to Antarctica once on a special trip. And my understanding is that Allen does in fact have a penguin also from Antarctica, although not as cool, didn't go all the way to the South Pole. It was from the British Antarctic Heritage Trust, which is at Port Lockroy, which is also a gift shop, apparently, which is kind of cool. And you can leave Antarctica there. Now, when Allen went, I had asked Allen if I could get a rock from Antarctica. But then when he returned, Allen explained that you do not pick up rocks in Antarctica. You don't take them away because they're precious natural resources. The penguins actually need them in order to make their nests and things like that. So it's really important not to take anything from there. And I was like, oh, thank goodness you didn't take anything. I was really glad of that. But he said, so what I did instead was I took a plastic bag from the gift shop. I put it on the Antarctic ice, and I brought it back for you. So this is the plastic
Yay!
bag, okay, which Alan kindly brought back. It was on Antarctica in December of 2015, and is still one of my great prized possessions because it is of Antarctica, but nothing. I left no impact, and I thank Alan for that wisdom and for this wonderful gift, which I still hang on to this day.
I
I
love
love
that.
that.
Although
That's
I
very
am beginning
imaginative.
to, I beginning to have this suspicion that actually Antarctica is nothing but gift shops. We've been told this fib
It's not
about it
true.
being
It's not
full
true.
of these scientific stations.
Well,
Yeah.
5 million
That
Yeah,
sounds
I
very
square
really love.
miles.
bonkers, actually, Andrew. That sounds
Right.
like something Douglas Adams would write.
It
That
really
Antarctica
does.
was. I got there and it was nothing but gift shops selling
I
Bogart
know.
poetry books.
It's the Dolman Saxville of the present day world for anybody who's into the Hitchhiker's Guide.
At least they're not shoe shops. Okay. At least they're not going to
Right.
cause the utter
But
collapse of our society.
Wow, you guys really are serious fans. That's excellent.
That's all we are. Well,
I love that we have connected these dots. Okay, I mean, the dots of like pieces of the universe, falling to Earth, and collecting them in various places, science fiction, real space stations, future space stations, and physics, astrophysics, and shopping,
yes.
all in one show. I mean, could we ask for anything more?
We cannot. This is the
Negative.
cosmos. This is the
Well said.
cosmos. This is the universe. Wonderful. If we had more time, we would use it, and we will come back again sometime. Absolutely, right? Geoff Notkin, Andrew Maynard, Cady Coleman, thank you so much for being with us today. What a pleasure. Everybody, please check out the reruns of Meteorite Man if you get the chance. And all of you, check out the Mission Interplanetary podcast wherever you get your podcasts, everyone. And all of you out there who have been with us today, thank you so much for being with us. If you like what you hear and see, please support us on Patreon. And as always, thank you for being a part of the LIUniverse.
Thanks very much.
Thank
It
you.
was fun.
It was a blast.